Yeah, so state law allows a municipality to more or less bill expenses within a half mile of the TIF to that TIF district. Um, because TIF 4, remember it's the Village Park in Plover, so Mark Motors, Great Northern Distillery, Oso's Brewing, that area. Um, Hampton Inn is immediately adjacent to Lake Packwell Park, obviously falls within that half mile radius. And in order for us to do that, what the village has approved this last week is authorized staff to work with Ehlers, which is our financial consultant, to put together a TIF amendment. So when a TIF district is created, we have to have a TIF plan in place. They're pretty thick documents that calls out what we'll be spending money on, how much we're expected to spend, things of that nature. And because the existing TIF plan does not identify the Lake Packwell Park improvements or the developer incentive that we're currently negotiating with this developer, we have to amend the TIF district to include those expenditures. So there's new increment that'll be created as part of this apartment project. Increment is the money that's created as a result of development above what the base value of that property is right now. And we're gonna use that increment to do two things: pay the developer incentive payment, and then help offset the cost to Lake Packwell Park. So, I mean, roughly speaking, that development will bring in between 1.9 and about 2.5 million from 2021 to 2031 in new increment, or new value to that TIF district. And whatever we use, whatever's remaining after the developer incentive payment is completed will go towards Lake Packwell Park.
Okay.
It should be stated that if this development doesn't go through, that the plan would be to not utilize that TIF to offset the Lake Packwell Park improvements. The only reason we're doing this Lake Packwell as a result is because of this development and working hand in hand to make sure that this project works. TIF districts don't impact property tax value or anything like that. The idea is that the improvements that occur within that TIF district will be offset by the development within that TIF district. Now, some municipalities have to service debt on TIF off of the general tax roll, and so sometimes municipalities and residents of that municipality are impacted by poor TIF decisions. We don't have that in the village, so it's nothing that we don't service debt on TIF. Yeah, TIF 4 was established in 2004, blight elimination TIF, so the former Rainbow Falls Water Park, the warehouse direct outlet mall that was south of Rainbow Falls was there as well. And so, both of those went out of business. The village, recognizing that was a major corridor on the I-39 interstate, and with Highway B there, began to reestablish that area, and that they utilized TIF for that. There's a lot of projects that were part of it. There was a huge hole essentially in the middle of that physical area, and so they filled that area and did a lot of work on the infrastructure side. So yeah, we amended it in 2005. In 2006, we added more territory to that TIF district. Actually, pretty much everything north of Highway B, like our Donnelly, the Yonkers building is in TIF 4, and then some of the other smaller lots that are there also in that TIF. And then in 2015, the TIF was amended again to help, because that TIF was doing so well. We wanted to make sure that we were meeting our essentially debt obligations in TIF 5.
Sure.
So we amended the TIF number 4 in 2015 to make it a donor district to TIF number 5. Okay. So that's TIF 4 is helping TIF 5 cash flow right now. So a TIF district, tax incremental finance, known as a TIF or a TID, is a physical boundary that's created by a municipality, used for pursuing redevelopment or new economic development opportunities. It's really pretty much the only economic development tool that the state of Wisconsin allows municipalities to utilize to encourage growth, help offset costs for infrastructure, things of that nature. So the village has 5 active TIF districts. TIF number 3 is the Pines Corporate Center, which has been a very successful TIF district for the village. TIF number 4 is Village Park at Plover, another horrendously successful TIF district for the village. TIF number 5 is the former Tree Acres Golf Course TIF, which hasn't been as successful, but because of the growth and development that's been occurring out there the last 3 years, that TIF has really turned itself around and is starting to pay more of the liabilities, the bonds against the TIF off as a result. TIF number 6 is the Heritage Estates Apartments TIF over by Walmart. That TIF was implemented because recognizing that there's a good chance the village won't go any further south than we already are, we won't go any further west than we already are. We put in oversized piping to go east, and that purpose, and that TIF was used for that purpose to help offset the cost of putting in oversized piping. And then TIF number 7 is our post road TIF, still relatively young TIF, but we've been borrowing against that TIF for some of the improvements along post road, the actual roadway improvements, and that has generated a lot of interest, and so we hope that development that will occur as a result of will help cash flow that TIF. So.